it's just the most enjoyable thing in the world to paint with oils. And but I think in this specific way, for me, there's no other way to do it, because I couldn't imagine using this material in a more controlled, like there's a moment in the painting, there's, maybe 10% of the painting when it gets super controlled, but I think the material itself, it's begging to figure itself out. That's how I see it.
Hello, welcome to this week's episode of Art Power. Today, we are watching and reflecting on the art process of Caroline. She's an artist who, at the time this video was shot, is based in New York. So let's just see what her process is and how she creates.
My name's Caroline Absher, and I am a painter living in Brooklyn, New York, and I'm from Greenville, South Carolina. In the very beginning, I started painting because it's something that kids do, we just paint, and I never stopped. I don't know why. It was always something that I did, and I couldn't stop. Something that sparked my interest was, I lived very far away from anything, we were just out in nature, and me and my siblings, I have 3 brothers, and we would always just build things. We would build things. I guess in the beginning I was more of a sculptor, and we would create these, forts and little huts and houses, and I used to be obsessed with fairies, and I used to build.
It's such a different way of living when you come from small town USA. I grow up or spend a lot of time in small town USA. It's kind of like the craziness or the always happeningness of a city doesn't fill the moments of your day. So you kind of have to become a creative. You have to make up your own games or entertain yourself based off of your own mindset. I can relate,
Little fairy houses everywhere, and it was just my childhood was full of this compulsive creation because there was nothing else to do, which is so special and rare. And
if you can think about this, my friends and I, as I got older, when I was a teenager, there was nothing to do besides play basketball, play sports, or cause mischief. So we used to go to Walmart, which is a superstore that has everything from food to car products to clothes it has basically everything you need. We used to go there and just get little, what do you call them? Little balls, not the hard balls, but toy balls, and we would just walk around Walmart and throw them at people. This is just small town USA.
I'm very grateful for that. I think I make things now because I can, and with my free time, I've always just done it. And I think that, everyone with passion and things that they love, it's just what they fill their time with. I think it's so important to make sure that you are trying to remain as present as possible with your time. And I always think about the phrase paying attention, because you're paying that attention to something. And it's I've always really tried to make art whenever I can, and I guess over time that pattern eventually led to a more consistent practice, and then it became something else. The first time that I think I felt like I made art, I don't know, I think like everything is art. Everything's art, but when I was probably in middle school, I started realizing that, you know, my drawings and the way that I drew was a little bit different from the other people. You know, I had this different way of going about it, and I think that's when I started realizing that there was something that I was doing differently. My goal right now with the work is to allow it to transform me and allow myself to transform it, and to build a relationship with the paintings that is free from any expectation for it to be anything in particular, for me to be anything in particular, and to allow this space between us that feels very healthy. And I think that the function of art is for the artist, in one way, of many ways, the function is for the artist to come back home to themselves through it, and to remember themselves through it. And for me, that's the most important thing. And then, of course, as soon as it leaves the studio, it becomes something else entirely, and it has this whole other life. But like, while it's in the studio, my goal is to be as intentional as possible with the relationship that I have to it, because I think that it's easy to get away from that. And I've noticed how easy it is to get away from that. I think that everything is inspiring. Like, I really try to stay aware and open to little things, like little synchronicities that happen throughout the day, the way that a tree moves, the way that someone speaks, or like I find poetry in and anything that film. I love movies. I absolutely love music. I mean, music is, I feel like I'm listening to music 24/7, and I can't live without it. But also just the little things, other people. I'm really inspired by love. I'm inspired by romance. I'm inspired by going out and really trying to.
It depends on like perspective, right? Like everything that we do and look at can be a form of inspiration if we allow it to be, you know. It's all about perspective.
Like squeeze the most that you possibly can out of everything. Like learn, grow, change, be different, and try to integrate new ways of seeing into your psyche at all times. And like, yeah, I think it's so important to let everything inspire you. Like I'm just a romantic in that way, I guess. I've recently been listening to a lot of classical music. I listen to a lot of ancient sounding flute stuff, like forest stuff. And then sometimes I like listening to, I love all the good stuff. I love all music, but I've recently been listening to whale songs while I paint because it's just like the most magical sound ever. And another thing that I've always loved is, ever since I was a kid, I've been super inspired by this artist. His name is Sufjan Stevens, and he's just one of those artists that stays with you forever, and you feel, very connected. So I feel like I should mention him. Sound, when I look at certain paintings, when they resonate with me is when I feel like I can hear the painting. And sometimes you can really hear paintings. And I think that that's so special, and I don't know how to explain. It's not something that you can consciously do. It's just the magic of painting. And I think that certain paintings are very, very lyrical and musical and sonic. And for me, it's never, they change based on what I'm listening to. They change based on how I'm feeling that day. They change based on so many different factors. But I think that like the sound of the painting that I hear when I look at them years and years and years after I make them, it kind of it matches the general emotion of that time in my life. And so there's this really interesting thing of like, when you look at something that you don't really relate to as much anymore, but you hear a specific sound, then there's this weird, it's like the time element of painting and I don't know if I'm explaining this right, but yes, paintings are very musical. The advice that I would give to younger artists is to just make stuff all the time and don't think about what it looks like or if it's good or not, because there's no such thing, and try to use free time well, like really, because it's the most valuable.
This is right here is key. It's like free time isn't free, you know. She mentioned at the beginning paying attention. What you pay attention to in your free time is actually the things that define you, you know. This is something that I've grown to appreciate more and more after the many obstacles, life-threatening events that I've had in my life. It's just the importance of taking advantage of the time that you have in between your commitments, you know, and how important being intentional with that time is to propelling you to live the life or get where you want to go, or etc. If you have skills you want to learn, or languages, or you want to learn how to paint, draw, anything you can think of, that 5 minutes here and 10 minutes here and 20 minutes here, and these moments add up, you know. And it's important to take advantage of them and make the main thing the main thing. I know it's like people say, I'll give a story example. Like when I played basketball, we would have people, or there's some players who said they were basketball players, but the amount of time they put in, like, represented someone who basketball was their distraction. You get what I'm saying? It's like basketball is a distraction because you only put in 1 hour or 2 hours a day. If basketball was your life, it would be reversed. You know, you would put in 15, 14 hours a day. So if you have other commitments going on that don't allow you to make where you want to go your life, you have to take advantage of the free time that you have, so that eventually those moments and that time compounds to where it replaces where you don't want to be right now. I hope that resonates.
Resource that we have, and everything can be art. Anything's art. And also, you don't have to make paintings. You can make anything you want. Poetry, music. It's like it's all connected and it's all the same thing. And thinking about work as something to like market or sell, I don't think that's the right way to go about it. I think you should just make what you feel is right.
This is your brain when you're struggling to focus. And this is your brain when you're in the zone.
My process is usually I stretch my canvases, I prime my canvases, and then I do, like what's behind me is they're just very abstract, expressive, emotive, you know, like getting it all out. Paintings using just everything, all my paint, everything that I can, all the energy, and then I keep going and going and going, and then a lot of times I will end up destroying those paintings over and over and over again, because it's a lot of like addition and subtraction, and you're layering and you're scraping away, and it's the paintings on the wall, it's on the floor, it's on the, and you're using like broomsticks and scrape, everything that I can think of to create like new and interesting textures and things happening on the surface. I just do until it looks right, until it feels right, until it feels balanced. And then when I really love what's happening on the surface when I love what it's doing, and there's this moment where I feel like I want to incorporate a figure, I want to incorporate more of a story or a narrative, then I look at that and I look at the shapes and the environment and the atmosphere that's created, and I try to tell a story in my mind about what I'm seeing. And the first thing that comes to mind is usually the best idea. And so I usually just stop it right there and I'm like, okay, that's what I'm doing. And then I go for it and I try to do that. And then if it works, great. If it doesn't, then even better, because I then have another thing to work on top of and build from. So there's never like a failure. It's always just the next thing to build off of. Color is so important in my work because it's so emotional. There's a lot of tension in color, and also the balance of it, and there's so much that you can do with color and say with it that it can be a little bit overwhelming to have the full spectrum available to me as a painter. But I tend to lean into that and really try to create these nuances of color whenever I can, and create new color combinations that seem like they're saying something new. And so I try to just use as much color as I can, but also I'm not afraid for them to blend and get weird, and for things to happen that I wasn't planning. And so I start with everything and then hone it down over time. I use a lot of different types of mediums, but usually it's just the standard linseed oil, Gamsol. I only use oil, yeah. And then recently I started mixing my own paints with pigments and stuff, which is really incredible. It's such a fun science experiment to mix your own paint. That's the one cool thing about oils is when it's dry and then you work on top of the dry oil, it's a new surface. It's like a dry erase board for me. You can just erase everything when you're done. There will be a little bit of a textural difference than when you walked in the studio that morning, because it's a little bit more matte. It's not as shiny, but something that is, the pressure's off, the pressure is usually off. And I work wet on wet, and that's why it's so cool, because you go in like full force, but you also know that like all this energy that you're putting into it, it's not permanent. It doesn't have to be permanent if you don't want it to be. So there's this really beautiful space that the painting gives you. I would say what I'm working on right now is there has been a kind of unraveling of the work over the past few years, and I have noticed that what it wants to do is I'm sort of releasing my control over the work at this point, where I've noticed that I tend to end up in certain places in the paintings, and then I'm noticing patterns. And so I think like the next show, what I really want to focus on is listening to these patterns that I've been picking up on over the past few years and really letting them have their moment. One thing that I'm really focusing on right now is letting place into the work. I've been making work in a lot of different places, different locations, different studios, different countries. So the next series that I'm making is going to be made in the woods, in the forest. I'm going to go and paint in the rainforest.
such a different perspective, such a different way to create, you know, just to let everything out, let the colors and the emotions of the day and the music create the background. And then once you feel like you've arrived to a place where you're ready to input like a figure or a face or a thing, it's a different perspective, you know. It's the work was absolutely, you know, amazing, you know, I think. So I can't wait for you all to see what I have for us next week. Stay tuned. If you haven't had the chance, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, like. It helps me show up more in the algorithm. Until next time.